the chilling allure of the supernatural. Daniel, a young man brimming with the optimism that often accompanies a new beginning, had just sunk his life savings into an old, abandoned house. The property, perched on the outskirts of a forgotten town, was a relic of a bygone era, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin and its windows clouded with the dust of decades. To others, it was a dilapidated wreck, a testament to neglect, but to Daniel, it was a canvas, a place where he could build a future. He saw past the overgrown ivy that choked the walls and the skeletal trees that clawed at the roof. He saw potential. His first days were spent in a whirlwind of activity, a solitary battle against the decay that had claimed the house as its own. Armed with brooms, buckets, and a tireless spirit, he began the arduous task of reclamation. It was during one of these cleaning frenzies, while wrestling with a stubborn, cobweb-shrouded bookshelf in what he presumed was the study, that his fingers brushed against something cold and unyielding tucked away in a dark corner. Curiosity piqued. He reached in and pulled out his discovery. It was an ancient iron key, heavy and ornate, its surface pitted with age and coated in a fine layer of grime. The metal was cool to the touch, and it felt substantial, important, in a way a modern key never could. As he wiped it clean on the sleeve of his shirt, a peculiar detail emerged. Engraved into the bow of the key was a symbol, crudely scratched as if by an unsteady hand, a single, unblinking eye. It was a simple yet unsettling design, and as Daniel stared at it, a shiver traced a path down his spine, a cold premonition he couldn't quite name. He pocketed the key, dismissing the feeling as a product of the house's gloomy atmosphere, and returned to his work. But from the very moment his skin had touched the cold iron, a subtle shift occurred. The house, which had been silent save for the sounds of his own labor, began to whisper. A faint metallic clinking like a key tapping against a lock would echo from deep within the walls, always just at the edge of his hearing. He'd stop, listen, and the sound would vanish, leading him to question his own senses. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence that seemed to watch his every move. The strangeness escalated. One evening, as he stood before the large, age-spotted mirror in the main hallway, a faint mist began to cloud the glass from within. He watched, frozen in place, as letters began to form, etched into the condensation by an invisible finger. The message was stark and chillingly direct. Return what was taken. A jolt of pure fear shot through him. His mind immediately went to the key, the only object he had taken from the house. The clinking in the walls grew louder, more insistent, no longer a faint echo, but a distinct rhythmic tapping that seemed to be coming from directly behind the mirror. A dawning, dreadful realization began to settle over him. The message wasn't a warning, it was a demand. And the source of the demand was trapped just beyond the looking glass. With trembling hands, Daniel pushed against the heavy, ornate frame of the mirror. At first, it wouldn't budge, but as he applied more pressure, he felt a slight give. A low groan of grinding wood and rusted hinges filled the hallway as the mirror swung inward, revealing not a solid wall, but a dark, gaping aperture, a hidden door. The air that wafted out of the opening was stale and ancient, carrying with it the scent of dust, decay, and something else. Something akin to long-forgotten sorrow. In the center of the wooden door, almost invisible in the gloom, was a keyhole, its design a perfect match for the iron key he had found. The scratched eye symbol was there too, carved into the wood above the lock. It was as if the house itself was guiding him, leading him toward a predetermined fate. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to leave the key, the house, and its dark secrets behind. But an equally powerful, morbid curiosity held him captive. He had to know. He had to see what lay beyond. With a hand that shook so violently he could barely aim, he inserted the iron key into the lock. It slid in with a sickeningly perfect click, a sound that seemed to seal his destiny. He took a deep, shuddering breath and turned it. The lock mechanism groaned, a sound like a dying man's last breath, and the door swung open, revealing a long, dark corridor that stretched into an oppressive blackness far beyond the reach of the hallway light. The air inside was freezing, a stark contrast to the relative warmth of the house, and it carried a low, humming vibration that Daniel could feel in the soles of his feet. The walls of the corridor were lined with paintings, their canvases dark and their subjects obscured by shadow. As he took his first tentative step into the passage, a sudden, inexplicable change occurred. The iron key in his hand, which had been cold and inert, began to emit a soft, ethereal glow. The light, a pale, sickly green, pulsed with a rhythm that matched the frantic beating of his own heart, casting long, dancing shadows down the corridor. This unholy light illuminated the paintings, and Daniel recoiled in horror. Each portrait was of a person, but their eyes were not paint. They were alive, luminous and real, and they all turned in unison to follow him as he moved. He could feel the weight of their collective gaze, a mixture of despair, hatred, and a desperate, silent plea. The glowing key tugged at his hand, an unseen force pulling him deeper into the suffocating darkness. He was no longer in control, merely a passenger on a journey orchestrated by the cursed object he held. The corridors seemed to stretch on for an eternity, each step taking him further from the world of the living. The whispers that had once haunted the edges of his hearing now swirled around him, a cacophony of disembodied voices pleading, threatening, and moaning his name. Finally, the key's pull led him to the end of the hall, where a final door stood waiting. It was larger and more imposing than the first, fashioned from a dark, almost black wood and carved from top to bottom with a single massive eye, an exact replica of the symbol on the key. This was the terminus, the heart of the house's malevolence. The key pulsed violently now, its green light bathing the door in a hellish glow. Daniel raised the key, his arm moving as if guided by a puppeteer. As he inserted it into the final lock and turned, a deafening crack, like thunder splitting the very foundations of the earth, echoed through the passage. The great door did not open. It shattered, exploding inward into a shower of splintered wood and dust. From the abyss beyond, a torrent of spectral energy burst forth. It was not one soul, but hundreds, a swirling vortex of translucent, shrieking forms, their faces twisted in eternal agony. They were a tempest of trapped spirits, a hurricane of despair unleashed after an eon of imprisonment. They swarmed around Daniel, their ethereal hands grabbing, pulling, and clawing at him. The cold was absolute, a void that extinguished all warmth, all life. He cried out, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the damned. The force was irresistible, dragging him off his feet and pulling him into the realm of darkness from which they had escaped. The corridor, the light, his life, it all dissolved into an infinite, screaming blackness. Back in the silent hallway, the hidden door slammed shut with a deafening finality, the sound echoing through the empty house one last time. On the wooden floor, just before the now-sealed mirror, the ancient iron key lay where it had fallen, its green glow extinguished. It rested in the dust, cold and silent once more, forgotten and waiting for the next curious hand to pick it up. A mystery that remains forever unsolved.